Hey guys, so I wanted to make this video real quick to basically address the post I made and go over and kind of explain my rationale behind most of the changes I've suggested, because to be quite frank, reading them at first glance, they may seem like super minor and maybe like, well, this isn't going to help us at all. And I kind of just want to explain why it actually digs deeper into the change. I've also already made this video, but it was close to an hour long, so I wanted to shorten it up because ain't nobody have time for that. So I'll just get straight into the changes. So standalone ability changes I've suggested. One of the suggestions was to increase the healing done by our artifact trait, Healing Storm. So what it does is it heals up to 6 allies for 150% of your attack power. I think it's kind of laggy right now, but I just want to showcase kind of what the storm looks like for anyone who doesn't know. So it sends out these tornadoes when you use Divine Storm, and the artifact trait allows those to heal people. So my suggestion for that is to increase the PvP multiplier on it by a significant amount and also have it affect the paladin. So that way you sort of get the old Word of Glory back, but in a much cooler form. Similar to kind of how Deathstrike works, with the main difference being Divine Storm isn't really a significant source of damage in PvP at all. It hardly makes a scratch into the people that you hit with it. So making its primary function is like kind of a significant heal for yourself, and also up to a couple teammates that are hit by it would be a pretty cool way to bring that back. Another way is to just bring baseline Word of Glory back, kind of like how it functioned in WoD, but make the talent convert it into an AoE. Why that would be like the second kind of way to do it, as I can see how it would affect PvE and primarily like self-sustainability when you're questing. It'd be a pretty big buff to it, so I don't really see that flying. So I feel like the best way to get this one in and to kind of give us some of the old gameplay we had and some of the healing we had back that was completely gutted, because as it stands right now, this is all we can do. We can only cast Flashlight, and inside Arena you only get 3 of them off before you go On top of that, your Hand of Hindrance, it costs like a third of your mana. It costs 60,000 mana. You have just over 200k. Why does it cost a third of your mana? Just please remove the mana cost from this. I don't think it should be there. I mean, I get the ability having to cost something, but the cooldown should be enough. It would just help us out when we're recovering behind a pillar to have that extra flash heal, right? It's just a quality of life change. It's not major, but we do need quite a few quality of life changes and a couple major changes to really give us back our place. Let me just pull up my word pad here. So we went over this. We went over the mana cost. So Shield of Vengeance. So it should be off the GCD. Divine Purpose is off the GCD. Sorry, not Divine Purpose, Divine Protection. It was all throughout MoP, WoD, Holy Paladins. It's still off the GCD. Bark Skin is, Iron Bark is. Every defense, minus the hard ones like Bubble and Ice Block, are typically off the GCD. So it makes sense for Shield of Vengeance to also be off the GCD. I feel like this was just an oversight, so please take a look at that. Also, it's dispellable. It's our primary defense outside of Bubble. Please make it indispellable. Again, I feel like this is an oversight. A lot of people have been suggesting it, myself included, since very early alpha. For a mage to instantly spell steal it, for it to instantly be purged by half the classes in the game, it's not good, right? This isn't a power word shield. Like it's a minute and a half cooldown defense. So make it indispellable, please. Other kind of quality of life changes: Divine Steed off the global cooldown. Mostly because if we pop our Divine Steed and Freedom over it, we lose like 30% of our duration of Divine Steed. If we do the opposite, if we freedom before we Divine Steed, we lose a quarter of our freedom uptime, right? So just with it being off the GCD, you can do them both in one, and you don't really have the loss of either. You know, when you get to your target, you still have your freedom up. Whereas the way it is right now, you press your freedom, you press your Divine Steed a second and a half later. The time it takes to get to your target, you jump off your horse, your freedom's expired by that time, right? It seems insignificant, but PvPers, you'll understand it's actually a huge deal to have certain abilities off the GCD. Defenses and your gap closers like charge and whatnot, you know, they definitely shouldn't be on the GCD. They never usually are. It's just weird for it to be. It doesn't deal damage. It's purely a gap closer, so take it off the GCD. Blessing of Sanctuary, the same way it was in Warlords. The Magic Dispel was off the GCD. Please put Blessing of Sank off the GCD. It's a huge deal when you're attacking your target, waiting for, say, the Paladin. You see him running into Hodge. You have to stand there like a goon until he Hodges to get the sack off immediately before you get Cross CC'd. It just makes combat much more fluid. It kind of increases the skill cap in a way, because the faster you react, the faster you get it off. You're not waiting for that global. You know, happen to be on global, you know, it's the second half you have to wait, it's the second half they have to cross EC, right? So, just like it was before, the Absolve mechanic behind Hand of Sacrifice in WoD, just take this off the GCD, it'll help us out a lot. It seems minor, but it's a big deal. So those are the standalone ability changes. So going into our talent rows real quick, I just want to blitz through them, don't want to take too long. Execution Sentence, make if it's dispelled, make it deal the final damage on the tick again, like it was in MoB and like it was on WoD. I feel like it was an oversight. You guys didn't think it was a big deal, I guess, but it is a big deal. Right now, the only way this talent is useful is if you're putting it on a healer before you stun them and trying to like blow them up in the stun. There's no other use for this talent outside of that whatsoever, except maybe 1v1s if they can't dispel it off himself, right? If it's off, if it deals its damage when it's dispelled, it has a place outside of one-shotting healers, right? If its only place is one-shotting the healer, it's not good talent design, right? And I say that because it's going to be dispelled in some way or another. If you put it on the DPS every time, if it negates the total damage, right? And if that's the case, again, what's the point in taking it, right? It would be really cool to have a sort of range finisher or a way to set up a burst outside of stuns on the healer. So if it dealt damage on the Dispel, I'll go into it later how it would kind of integrate with just Curse Vengeance, and it could set up kill windows that aren't just globaling people. So please change that. It functioned like that in MoP, it functioned like that in WoD. It wouldn't be a big deal. It wouldn't affect PvE. It would make a big deal for Ret Pallies. Other players probably wouldn't care very much. So, second row, Fires of Justice. Visual cue for Fires of Justice. This isn't like really PvP related, but every other proc that we have has a visual cue except for this, so just real quick, please give it a visual cue so we don't have to use add-ons for it. That'd be nice. Fist of Justice. Please change this to reduce the cooldown based on any holy power spenders you have instead of just damaging abilities. Again, for anyone else playing the game, it doesn't matter, but for PvP it's a big deal. And specifically in 3v3 Arena, it makes Seal of Light. You're not going to want to ever take it, because when you spend your holy power on Seal of Light, it doesn't reduce cooldown of Fist. It's better to just sit in the root and spam Divine Storm to reduce on nobody. Even if it hits nobody, it's better to reduce the cooldown than to spend the holy power on a useless tiny 20% of mobility, right? So just to make it a bit more appealing, same with Word of Glory, the healing's so insignificant, it's better to just stand there and Divine Storm nothing, get the cooldown reduced, than to spend the Holy Power on a heal that's never going to save anyone. So, make that change real quick, make the unappealing talents slightly more appealing. Next talent row real quick is Divine Hammer. This again, it's not really going to affect 3v3, but it could in certain scenarios. For example, if we're facing double melee cleave and they're running at our healer. Basically, the way this talent row works is these two talents with Law and Order snare the enemy. They both replace Bladed Justice. This one's Blade of Wrath replaces Bladed Justice. This one modifies Bladed Justice. This one replaces Bladed Justice, but it does not work with Law and Order. Chances are, most of the time, you're not going to take it, even if it did. But in the snares where you would maybe want to take it, to provide like a constant snare, it would be pretty cool if you had some functionality in there, right? Just to have the swirling hammers around you. Like if these hammers constantly snared people, you can see it's like a tiny range. It could open up some gameplay options, right? So you would give up like a significant portion of damage to have kind of a snare with a really high amount of uptime as long as you remain in melee range, right? And for being a class that's so immobile, that could actually open up a lot of different gameplay styles, if you can kind of understand what I'm saying by that. So the next talent row, Justicar's Vengeance. This is where another one of the most important changes I'm suggesting should happen. The other one being Execution Sense. This damage, again, this could be a PvP knob only, so it doesn't mess with PvE. So what you'd want to do is reduce the damage it does in stuns to 50% and increase the base damage by 50%. So that way the damage it deals in stuns is still the same, but outside of stuns it does a bit more damage. And the reason for that is, I guess when you guys were designing the talent, I'm not sure like the thought process behind it, but any paladin in PvP is always going to hodge the healer because it's dispellable, and because that's pretty much it. Just because it's a dispellable stun, you're going to be using it on the healer every single time. It's just not worth using on the DPS pretty much ever, unless they don't have a trinket and you have cross CC available. So what that means is this talent, its only purpose is to global healers and stuns, right? It's bad talent design. It's the same as Execution Sense. These two together, you global healers and stuns, right? The problem is, and why that, I mean, that is our place in the meta right now, is to global healers and stuns, right? That's the most successful way to play Ret, if you can manage to play it at real arenas right now. So basically, you don't want to make our class revolve around one-shotting healers and stuns, right? And the way to do that would be to, with these combinations of talents, what would happen is you would go in, right? You could press Execution Sense on the target, the kill target. You could run over to the healer, you could stun them, and then you would have enough burst to open up a little kill window. Inside that, if you timed your Execution Sense with, a 5 holy power, Justicar's Vengeance, right? So that way, the damage doesn't have to be pigeonholed onto a healer. You don't have to risk it being dispelled and losing all your damage before you pull it off, because if it gets dispelled, they still take the damage. You can still do it. And if you build up your 5 holy power, you press it, you throw it on a Wake of Ashes, you press it again. It's not insignificant damage. You can cut someone down to 60, maybe 50% if you get a crit. That opens up kill windows, right? The way it works right now is no matter what you do, you're not going to get a kill window like that. And that's part of what Ret's problem, right? You're immobile, but you do very mediocre damage, right? You're high on the damage meters doing your rotation, but the damage is insignificant. In the same way that a Demon Hunter spamming Demon's Bite and Chaos Blade, that's That's a huge part of their damage, but it's insignificant. That's not going to kill anyone. You know, getting Crusader Strike, Blade of Justice up, and, you know, dumping Templars Verdicts, it's going to put you up on the meters, but you're not going to kill anyone with it, right? Most classes in the game have a little combo to kill people. Ret's combo to kill people revolves around using it on healers because they can't dispel themselves while they're stunned. And a huge part of that, and why that's a problem right now, and why it's like bad, is Orcs with Relentless. It cuts your Hodge, which is your only CC button, because ain't nobody going to take Blinding Light or Repentance ever. Relentless, it's going to cut that stun down to 3 seconds if you're an Orc, because there are racial stacks with it, right? Another issue is, even if they're not an Orc, chances are they're going to be human. And humans have another stun escape. So, wargaming, a lot of top teams, and specifically the top EU teams that are really like into studying the game and the new changes, what they do is, and they've caught on within a couple days, is they just rotate healer cooldowns for one stun setup, they use their racial for another and trinket another, and if they rotate those three, they have a cooldown for every setup for like 4 minutes straight. So, you know, facing any healer that kind of like gets used to the one-shot, the kind of gimmicky playstyle, it just doesn't work anymore, and it kind of completely eliminates your spot in the meta, right? So what I'm suggesting is to change our strengths from upfront stun burst into kind of a setup sort of burst, right? So just a couple little tweaks that no one would even bat an eyelash up completely changes the most effective way to kind of play our class in 3v3, right? You go from blowing up healers and stuns to actually being able to set something up outside of the stuns, right? So that is that talent row. This talent row, I made a couple suggestions to Seal of Light, because right now it's just not worth pressing, especially without it reducing cooldown of Fist. But even outside that, when you have Auto Bubble and you have it reducing cooldown of your bubble by 50%, just a mediocre movement speed increase just isn't worth it. Like, you have something so powerful here, and you have something so garbage here. Why would you ever take it? So a couple suggestions for this row is to make this a little more appealing via a couple tweaks. So you could have it cost 1 Holy Power, 30-second duration. You could kind of make it the way it functions now, but a max of 3 Holy Power, and then buff the duration of each Holy Power spent to 30 seconds, let's say. So it's the same effect at max Holy Power, but it costs less, right? Maybe just make it a bit better. Other ways you could do it is, like, you know, you can make it cost 1 Holy Power and purge your movement impairing effects. You could empower Cleanse while it's up to like dispel your movement impairing effects. Like, those are kind of really cool changes that I'm sure all the rep highs would die for, but it's not appealing in PvE, so I can see why you guys wouldn't want to do that. But one of the earlier suggestions would make it a little more appealing, right? I would at least have it compete with Cavalier, because Cavalier is much better than this as it is. So if you make the Fist change and you make this a little bit better, you know, maybe it'll compete with Cavalier. Chances are you're going to take this anyway, unless for sure you know you're not going to be a target. Then you might take the movement speeds. So on top of that, everyone and their mother has been complaining about Auto Bubble. Myself included, any other ret I know, any PvPer I've ever talked to, and even top raiders, they all agree that this is like a garbage mechanic. All it does is reward mistakes. It dumbs down the game. It's frustrating to fight against. It's even frustrating to play with. It's just not good. It's really toxic for the game to have another like cheat death mechanic. There'd be no more fun like down goes Avengelyne moments. There'd be no anticipating damage and avoiding it with it. You know, it just rewards you for standing in fire. It rewards you for running around the pillars and ignoring your health bar. So please take another look at this. It's just not good. Auto Bubble. Another portion of this is Holy Paladins have a baseline. and we have to spec into it, which is like questionable. But on top of that, this talent for Holy Paladins also reduces the cooldown on Divine Protection by 50%. We had that in WADs. We had our primary defense Divine Protection cut down by 50%. You had a survivability option in here. Maybe look at making that a thing again. Maybe reduce cooldown Shield of Vengeance by 50%. Incorporate that with this, lob auto bubble. That would be the best case scenario. But, you're going to have the PvE people crying about it. But, I just think it's bad talent design, at least for PvP, right? So, maybe talk about this one. 100 rows, okay. Holy Wrath's good for 1v1, 2v2, and whatnot. So, it's kind of weird the way it works, but I don't really care because you have other options. I don't like Crusade, but chances are Ret's doing 3v3 are going to take Divine Purpose. The only issue with this talent is the proc only lasts 12 seconds. So, when you have such shitty mobility, what happens is you get sheeped. You sit the sheep for 8 seconds. And then when you get out of the sheep, it takes you more than 4 seconds to get to your target, so the proc falls off. So I'm just suggesting make this a bit longer in PvP, right? PvP nub, make Divine Purpose last 15, 20 seconds, whatever, PvP only, right? It's a quality of life thing. It doesn't make a huge difference. You're not going to go up in tiers because of that change, but it's going to help us out, right? So that is just the regular talents, and keep in mind the main ones are Justicar's Vengeance, the damage and stuns. Please rework that a little bit, and Execution Stun's dealing its damage upon being dispelled. Those are two big changes that would change our gameplay from one-shotting healers and stuns to going for a more setup-based kill. It would be really healthy for the class overall if that was done. Please consider doing that. The honor talents is what I've put a lot of thought into. Knowing that you can't really screw with these too much, I've tried to suggest changes that don't screw with any other aspect of the game. So these ones I've been a little more bold with, and to be frank, if you guys are going to salvage Ret, at least for kind of competitive PvP, you'll have to be kind of bold changing a few of these. And I say that because in 2v2 and duels in BGs we're pretty good, and that is due to Retribution being powerful. When someone dies in a party that you're in, you gain a shitload of damage and damage reduction. Vengeance Aura, it's always at full stacks in BGs, so BGs you're good for. 1v1s, 2v2s, you have these upfront, blow up kind of cooldowns, Holy Wrath, so you can deal with those situations. Where we're really weak, and I would honestly say we're the worst spec in the entire game right now, is 3v3. And I've played a few other classes. I've played for an hour and a half, and I've done better in threes than with my Ret that I've played for 10 years. So I'm not pulling this out of my ass. I've played it through thick and thin. This is easily the worst we've ever been for threes. So moving on to honor talents real quick. Tier 1 and 2 are shared amongst most classes, so I won't talk about those as they're all okay, whatever. Tier 3. Law and Order, I really like this talent. It's designed really well. It's not like ridiculous. It makes a lot of sense, right? One of the problems with Hand of Hindrance is when it's dispelled, which can be removed by like 90% of the classes in the game instantly, it reduces the cooldown. That's good. Blade of Justice applies it. You have your talent row here to modify Blade of Justice. It's cool. This takes care of our snare problem. Works well. Jurisdiction works well too. I found if I have teammates that have a snare, I take Jurisdiction instead of Law and Order. It makes sense, right? Those are good choices. This is a good choice. This is a good choice. What's a bad choice is Unbound Freedom. It's pointless. It's actually a waste of a talent slot. So what I'm suggesting is fill this with something a little more interesting, right? No one chose Rets to have burst of speed or movement speed increases, right? So a couple ways you could do this is change it so this is called like Aura of Freedom, right? And the way that would work is replace this Blessing of Freedom. Now when you use Aura of Freedom, all your teammates with greater blessings now gain freedom. So what that would do is The biggest problem with using freedom on your teammates right now is, as you guys know, and as you've addressed in the latest changes with Divine Steed, we're easily the least mobile class in the game right now. Even with using freedom on ourselves every time, we have the worst mobility. And that's okay, I'm all down for being immobile as long as we have the damage and utility to back that up, right? So the problem is, if you're playing with another melee or your healer's trained and you give them freedom, now it's on cooldown for 25 seconds. And this is what we look like when freedom's on cooldown, right? This is us in arena when freedom's on cooldown, literally the whole arena. It's simply too punishing to put it on teammates, right? So that takes an element of rep play away where you can't really put it on teammates. It kind of dumps down the class a little bit. So having it as an aura, kind of an AoE sort of freedom, it solves two problems. The first problem is it's literally instantly dispelled by most compositions. Most compositions, this is gone instantaneously. Another issue is, like I said, you lose some mobility on yourself if it's up. If you turn it into an aura, it's not dispellable, right? It's up on your team. That way you're not punished for using it on your teammates, right? And the way Greater Blessings work is you can only have 3 up. Most of the time, you only have them on 2 people because you use 2 Mights and a King's. Most of the time it's up on 2 people, use your freedom, you and your partner get a freedom, right? Sometimes, if you want to change your blessing to give the healer Kings or something, just use your freedom. That's a skillful thing you can do, right? Give your third guy freedom. It would add an element of depth. It would fix a couple of our glaring issues. I don't think people would whine about it because you give up your snare or you give up hodge range, right? It's a choice. Depending on the comp and depending on what you play, you change between all 3 of these, right? So that's my suggestion for that. The other one is make it the way Liberator was before. Reduces cooldown by 60% if you use it on teammate. The issue I see there is you're going to find yourself almost using it exclusively on teammates. So you let freedom on once, cooldown's 10 seconds, which is great, then you can use it on yourself in 10 seconds, but once that 10 seconds is up, you'll find it's just better if you constantly freedom your teammates instead of yourself, and you pigeonhole yourself into no mobility again. So I think the earlier change I suggested is a much better way of making that more interesting and giving us some choice, right? So that's really what we need, is more choice. The problem right now is Retribution used to be all about countering what they did, right? You change your talents up depending on what you fought. You take a setup that could do a little bit against what you fight, right? Right now it doesn't matter what you pick in most cases for what you fight. So just give us a bit of choice. Make a useless talent, turn it into an interesting choice, can change it up, right? Need more mobility, unbound freedom, right? You need a snare, law and order. You need hodge range, jurisdiction. Great row after you take care of this one. The next row, tier 4, my suggestion for this is you replace Holy Ritual with the Old Sacrifice. And I don't mean the Old Sacrifice as in the Magic Dispel Absolve Sacrifice. I mean the old school sacrifice we've had since level 70, level 80. The one where you would predict blinds incoming, you would sack your teammates, break the blind, wyverns, things like that. One of the most skill cap things about paladins, one of the most in-depth and fun to use talents is Pruned coming into Legion. We've had it forever. It was very, very useful in PvP, not because it was a powerful defensive tool, just because it added depth and you can make game-winning plays with it. It sucks that it's gone now. I miss it a lot. Any other Ret that plays 3v3 misses it a lot. Holy Ritual, it's good for 1v1s and situations where the other 2 talents are pointless. Holy Ritual is a waste of a talent slot. Please give us the old sack back in this talent slot. Pure of Heart and Luminescence, these are both good talents. Especially Pure of Heart if you face rogues, especially Luminescence if you fight like Cleavy kind of teams where your whole team's taking damage, right? So you have something to help you out with your team taking damage, you have something to help out if there's a lot of poisons, diseases. Those are really cool choices. The only problem is they're 10 yards. I mean, 10-yard range means you have to stand on top of your healer for them to be effective. You know, all I'm saying is increase the range. It should be super easy, wouldn't affect anything else in the game. No one's going to bat an eyelash at it, but you definitely notice the difference in arena. It would go from, you know, kind of useless things, unless you're standing on your healer, to something like quite useful, right? Make them kind of auras, right? We miss auras. The only one we have is Vengeance Aura. So kind of give us something we've been missing back with that. So on to the next tier real quick. Tier 5. So Tier 5, Vengeance Aura. As I mentioned before, in BGs it's very good. It's almost too good. It gives you constant 15% damage. In Arena, it never stacks up. It's only a 6-second duration. It hardly ever gets past 2 stacks in Arena. So what I'm suggesting is change the stacks so it only stacks up 3 times. Change the power of the stacks from 3 to 4. So instead of 15% max, it goes to 12% max. Change duration to 10 seconds. Effectively, it'd be probably a tiny bit worse than BGs, a lot better in Arena, right? Right now it's too good in BGs, too shitty in Arena. Change the duration to be higher, change the stacks to be less. Change the power of the stacks a little bit more, kind of balance it out. So make this a little bit better in Arena. Blessing of Sanctuary. Someone just whispered me. Someone just whispered me. I'm doing a convincing guide for Blizzard. How did they know, man? I don't know how they knew. That's pretty funny. Let me just show you. Holy shit. Anyway. Where was I? So yeah, change Vengeance Aura a little bit, just tweak it. Blessing of Sanctuary is good. It's still bugged on a couple abilities though. Specifically, Unstable Affliction Silence, it doesn't remove the silence from that, even after the fixes. There might be a couple more, I just can't remember right now, but the big one is UA Silence. And take it off the global. A couple more bug fixes with that, take it off the global. We'll be good to go with that. Seraphim's Blessing, it's good for 1v1s, duels, stuff like that. You don't really need to touch it as its place. These two are good enough choices for this tier. Where the main thoughts for me with the bold changes happen in this tier. Just to explain it a little bit, Lawbringer is too powerful. Everyone takes it right now. Literally everyone's taking it. I've experimented extensively with Divine Punisher and Hammer Reckoning. The issue with both of these, all 3 of these, is their generic damage increases, right? What we don't need is more damage increases, right? You guys can change damage increases from tuning knobs. You can give us more mastery, something, you know, if we need damage. We shouldn't be talenting into generic damage increases, right? With Hammer Reckoning, you know, it builds up when you take damage with the greater blessings. Basically, it ramps up pretty quick. You press it, it does a couple 100k damage, maybe 200-300k, depending on what cooldowns you have up. And that's it, right? Very underwhelming, especially compared to Hammer Wrath, if that's what it's supposed to kind of be a replacement for. Divine Punisher, I really like the Holy Power generation. You know, it makes your Hodge come off cooldown quicker, stuff like that. But the problem is it pigeonholes you into tunnel visioning one target. Your opponents you fight don't want to be tunneled the whole time. As a good player, you don't want to be tunneling people the whole time. As an immobile spec, you can't tunnel people the whole time, right? So you don't, you know, it's not very good design to reward players for tunnel visioning people, and that's what this talent does. And like I said, Lawbringer is too powerful. So my suggestion for this tier, and it's the boldest suggestion out of anything I've made so far, what you're going to want to do is choice 1. Change Lawbringer to Empowered Judgment, or whatever, keep the name. Basically what you're going to do is combine these 2 talents, Divine Punisher and Lawbringer, into one. what it's going to do is extend the duration of judgment by 10 seconds. So instead of it being 38 seconds with this talent, which is frankly overkill, and you don't ever need 38 seconds of judgment, what that does is basically allow you to judge everything in the arena and always have it up. There's no need for that, right? You extend it by 10 seconds, 18 seconds on a target. You can keep it up on a couple targets, good enough, right? So extend it by 10 seconds instead of 30. Replace the 5% damage of their total health it does, which is pretty significant on 2.5 million health. Change that to it generates a holy power. Or 2 holy power. Whatever you guys, whatever the tuning feels right. Maybe 2 holy power would make it a little too good. So 1 holy power, right? So make this a talent where you don't have to worry about timing judgment. It can be a convenience talent, straight up damage. This is just straight up damage talent, right? Combine these two into one. Hammer of Reckoning, we're just going to skip option 2 here real quick and go into option 3. What you would do with option 3, Hammer of Reckoning, instead of it ramping up to deal, more damage, it doesn't really ramp up to do more damage as it is, because every time it's off cooldown, it's going to be at max stacks, right? So instead of it just dealing more damage, have it so after the ramp up, it cleanses the target with Holy Fire, and it removes all their buffs. Similar to how Kleptomania works for Spellsteal, it's a longer cooldown kind of purge. It nukes all the buffs, right? Make it do that for Hammer of Reckoning. Allow us to spec into a magic dispel, an offensive dispel. And the reason for that is just to open up more options in the comp meta, right? Warrior, Druid, Ret is not very good to play. Why? Because you have no magic dispel. Having a Ret being able to talent into it, depending on what you play, depending on what you fight, it won't change us tiers, it won't make us go up tiers levels. We're not going to be like the best melee all of a sudden because we can spec into it, but it's going to open up some comp options, right? And that's what we need. We need more ways to deal with what we fight, right? We have no mobility, we have mediocre damage, we have a gimped utility set compared to what we had before. Give us some choice here. Make this interesting. Don't just make these damage increases. And my suggestion for Divine Punisher is Empowered Rebuke. Let me just change this to my word pad here. Okay, so Empowered Rebuke, right? So no longer will this interrupt people. What this will do is it'll incapacitate the target for 8 seconds on a 60-second cooldown, 20-yard range. That's the old repentance we used to have. Back in Wrath of Lich King, back in BC, Vanilla WoW, actually. Vanilla WoW we had repentance in for Retribution. We've had that since Vanilla WoW. It was pruned out in MoP, replaced by Blinding Light. You guys did your CC prune, you got rid of all the instant CCs. We lost it, right? It was unfortunate because it got pruned, it got given to every spec via cast form. It sucks, but no Ret Pally ever is going to take repentance because you can't get it off. I tried to take it in WoD even with 1 second cast with powered seals. Still pointless, it's just better to take the stun. Ain't nobody going to be taking repentance. Change this so we have to trade our interrupt, because honestly adding another instant CC without losing something for it is just too much of a power increase for talent. We give up our kick, right? We give up our wizard lockdown, which everyone complains about anyway. They always complain about too many kicks in the game, they can't get cast off, blah blah blah. Give up our kick, give us back repentance. We didn't used to have kick. Nobody chose Ret Paladins to get kick, right? Didn't used to have in BC, Wrath. I think we got in Kata. So we don't need it. Depending on what we fight, right? Again, there's a lot of situations kick would be much more valuable than repentance. For example, you're fighting wizards, you have to stop the polys, you're going to want to be kick, you're going to want to be rebuke. You're going to want that extra damage or the offensive dispel. Against melee cleaves, if you're playing with a teammate without the kind of sheep DR CC, maybe you want to take that, right? It just opens up more comp options. It gives us more options depending on what we're facing. And that's what Retribution's always been all about. And that's how to fix this properly. So thanks for watching if you stuck through it, and please consider the changes, especially this tier, the quality of life changes, this doing damage upon it being dispelled, and retuning this. Those are the major ones. Look at Seal Light, look at Auto Bubble. You know, look at the boring talents, change them to interesting ones, right? Give us back sack, please. Get rid of this. Make it sacrifice. Anyway, thanks for watching.